You're listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast with Matt Tomasi and can be found at borntokickarse.com/episode 36.
Welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast, where you're introduced to the most fascinating people on the planet. Learn the ingredients of greatness that you can apply to your life. And now your host, Matthew Tomasi.
Hello listeners. Podcasting is an awesome way for me to share my passion with the world and provide you with inspirational interviews. The only downside with podcasting is that it's one-way communication. My guest and I talking and you listening. Now is the time for me to start building a kick-ass tribe with people like you. People who listen to my podcast, people who hear where I'm coming from, people who want to improve themselves and want to kick ass in life. Let's start building a relationship. To get the ball rolling, I need you right now to head to my website, borntokickarse.com, and sign up for my free newsletter. Once again, that's borntokickarse.com. Once you've signed up, I'll be able to find out from you what you want to improve in your own life, whether it's creating your own website or launching a podcast, or you want to improve your health, or you want to set and achieve big goals, or whatever it may be. Sign up now. I'm looking forward to connecting with you. In 1998, Ben Lecomte became the first man to swim 3,716 miles across the Atlantic Ocean from Massachusetts to Brittany in France. It took him 73 days. He dedicated his swim to his father, who passed away from cancer, and the purpose of the event was to raise funds and awareness for cancer research. Close to 2 decades later, Ben is now attempting to swim 5,500 miles across the Pacific Ocean from Japan to California. It's estimated the swim will take 6 months and is in support of the climate group and sustainability. Enjoy the interview. Ben Lecomte, welcome to the Born to Kick Arse podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Now, you are a long-distance swimmer, in particular an ocean swimmer, which we'll be talking about. How did you actually get into swimming? Were you always a swimmer growing up, throughout your childhood?
Well, I started, I think, around 5 years. When I was 5 years old, it was my father who taught me how to swim in the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean. And from that day on, I really liked being outdoors and the environment. So it's something that I enjoy doing at an early age. I didn't start doing swimming long distance until I was maybe a little older, like in my teen years. But I always had that adventurous spirit and trying to look for new things to do, to discover new things and discover myself at the same time.
So this was in France? You grew up in France?
Yes, I grew up in France. Correct, yes. And we took a lot of our summer vacation on the Atlantic and also Mediterranean early on, but it was always a summer at the beach.
All right. What's the water temperature like in France, sort of in summertime? Is it a little bit chilly or is it not too bad?
It all depends where you are. When we were on the Mediterranean side, so it was like 20 degrees centigrade, 21, 22. When you're on the Atlantic, on the south side near the Mexican border, the Spanish border, it is maybe 19, 18, 20 in the summer. But if you are in Brittany next to the UK, then the water is still kind of chilly, 17 degrees and around that. So, but I was in the south side.
Yeah. So did you do like any competition swimming when you were growing up, throughout school and, maybe through your teenage years? Were you like a competitive swimmer, like in a 50-meter pool?
Not at all. Not at all. I never did it in a competitive setting. I did a lot of other sports in competitive setting. I was doing a lot of downhill skiing, and that's what pushed me into swimming a little more, because when I was about 14, I was selected to be in a school that was very specific to skiing. So you were with other kids there, and at the age of 14, 15, 16, you were going to ski in the morning and have classes in the afternoon. So it was to select, to be very specific and very all about skiing. But before going into that school, I had to go through a full medical checkup, and they found out that one of my disc in my lower back was a little bit bulging. Nothing big. I didn't have any pain and nothing at all, but that was enough of a concern for them to not put me into the program, and in case something happened after doing all those years of skiing and skiing. So I was, of course, devastated, because at the age of 14, having an opportunity to be skiing almost all year round, that was something amazing. So, and the doctor told me, well, you like the water, you like swimming, so why don't you do much more of that and enjoy that part? And it's how I started. So since I never liked to be in a pool, it's too controlled. I start swimming in longer distance and doing more things in the water, in the ocean, and that's how I started. So I never, it wasn't a progression from a competitive swimmer in a pool and then moving into open water. Yeah. No, and when I was swimming, also I wasn't swimming like in the proper swimming style, if I can say, because I use fins, and I use snorkel, and I use wetsuit also. So it's a little bit different than regular swimmer who are going to cross the English Channel, for example. They have to apply and to follow very specific rules, which I don't. In my case, it's different.
Now, you moved to Austin, Texas, in your early 20s.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, it was Texas, but San Antonio.
Okay. Had you done any sort of long swims around that? When you were around sort of in your early 20s, had you done any sort of long adventurous type swims at that part of your life? Were you starting to get into it around then, or?
Yes, it's when it started, but it was at the time not across an ocean. It was more like a 24-hour swim or a few days swim in lakes.
How many of those did you do? Like, leading up to 1998, where you swam across the entire Atlantic Ocean, had you done sort of many, smaller swims leading up to 98?
Right. Not that many, because I realized very early on that it is not the number of swim that you are going to do like that will prepare you to do an event, swim across the Atlantic. It's more study training that you put 5 hours a day training constantly. And after, it's more the mind that you have to have a mind dedicated to it. And it's mind over matter. So I don't think it would have helped a lot if I had done many open water swims before, as long as I was regularly training and training my mind also. That was what helped me.
Now in Texas it's right in the middle of America. So where did you do your training when you're growing up through your 20s?
Yeah, in Texas, you have a coastline on the Gulf side. Okay, yeah. So it's not the ocean, but it is okay if you want to be in a salty environment. So I did some there, but most of it was in the lake.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lakes around Austin, and pool, but that are natural pool that are fed with a spring and are about 200 meter long, and it's all natural. So it's not really a pool. It's called pool because it's a location right there, but it's all very natural and very, very much outside. And
what sort of led you to? Was there like something that got you started, or got you started to think about wanting to swim across the Atlantic Ocean? When did that sort of idea first pop into your mind?
Yeah, that happened when I was in France. So it was 17 or 18. I don't remember exactly what age, but I was still in France at the time. You had a person who rowed across the Atlantic, Gérard d'Aboville, and then after he rowed across the Pacific. And when I was following him, and that inspired me to just try to think about something big, And I said, well, if one person can be in a little boat, it was about 6 meters long, and with all this food, this supply, can sustain himself through a big ocean. Well, I can probably imagine that I can maybe put a team with a boat, a support team, and I will be swimming about 8 hours and then going back on the boat, being with a team. I started, formulating that idea. But what gave me the initial idea is to see that person, Gérard d'Aboville, crossing the Atlantic and then the Pacific.
Now, the Atlantic Ocean, that's according to like Wikipedia, like you swam just under 6,000 kilometers in 73 days. How long did the planning take for this expedition?
Yeah, it took a long time because it's a project that I couldn't just get involved 100% in it. I still had to survive. Yeah. So I was doing that on the side, and it was very difficult also because nothing like that had been done before. So I had to, didn't have a plan to follow. I had a lot of questions with no answer and trying to find the expertise from the sailing side to the, medical side and so on. So it took a long time, but it was little at the time that I was moving forward and toward the goal.
So the actual route that you took for the Atlantic swim, was it from Massachusetts to to Brittany in France?
Correct.
With the ocean currents, did you take that into consideration as well?
Absolutely, yeah. That was one of the biggest and most important thing of doing any type of swimming in the ocean. Even if it's a coastal swimming, you always want to know what the currents are and what is the strength, and is it regular, does it change with the tide and all that. And so I looked at what Gérard d'Aboville was doing and other people who have crossed the Atlantic, what route they took, and you want to go from west to east on the northern part of the Atlantic because of the current. So you are following the Gulf Stream. There's a very strong current that's going to push you across, and very strong because at times we had 5 knots of current. So it's much faster than what I can swim. And you never want to be against that type of current. Otherwise, you lose every little mile that you have covered swimming. So yes, that was one of the most important was the current and the weather also.
So why did you actually do this swim, the Atlantic swim? Were you doing it for charity at all?
Yeah. So right after I get the idea of the swim, and I always looked at people who inspired me or people who I can talk to. And my father has been very important in my life. And growing up, I did a lot of things with him. outside, outdoors, and so on. And my father got diagnosed with a colon cancer, and he passed away very soon after that, a year and a half after. And for me, it was a life-changing event because, of course, it was my father, but also to realize that sometimes you don't want to have a dream and just let it set as a dream. You want to, because you don't know how long you will have, you want to pursue your dream and not, put them on the shelf. My father passed away at the age of 49. So that really motivated me to go after it and put me give me a big and say, hey, you don't want to live with regrets. And not only that, but it gave me a purpose to do it in his memory, to raise funds and awareness for cancer research.
What sort of difficulties did you face on this swim? Whereabouts did you sleep? Like at the end of your swimming day, did you sort of swim for set periods of time during the day? And after that, how did you sort of manage your time in terms of swimming and sleeping?
Right. So everything changes from what I had planned on doing and what exactly I was able to do. Before the swim, so I had a group of doctors and advisors and experts, and one of them, his name is Dr. Coyle, he's a professor at the University of Texas. And he told me, you know what you are about to do, and nobody has done that before. You haven't done it. You don't know how your body is going to react. So what I will advise you to do is to listen to your body, what your body needs, and never try to impose a very rich on yourself. Be flexible. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened, because my taste totally changed. So the food that I had planned to eat, I didn't like it. I couldn't eat it. My swimming schedule totally changed. I couldn't do what I had. Sleeping pattern totally changed also. So what I had planned at first is to go in the water for about 4 hours and then take a break, eat and sleep, and go back for another 4 hours. And I found out that it is very difficult once you are out and dry and you are you eat and you rest. It's difficult to imagine going back in the water, putting your back on the wetsuit and jumping. So what I end up doing is just jumping in the morning in the water and staying in the water for 8 hours. Right. For the food, for example, I liked everything that was sweet. When they did my menu, and the nutritionist gave me a full menu based on what I was eating before leaving, a lot of things were sweets, candy bars and all that. I could eat that like nobody. And I had boxes of those. And then in the first couple of days, I found out that anything that was sweet, I couldn't eat. It felt sick. I couldn't eat it at all. And the first thing I wanted to eat after my day of swimming was salty, like chips or pate and bread. Yep. So that totally changed. And since I wasn't able to eat in the middle of the day a big meal, then I was staying 8 hours a day, having little time having solid food while I was in the water. It's not practical. So during the morning, I was eating a big meal, and at night, I was eating a big meal, but that wasn't enough. I had to eat about 8,000 calories. So in the middle of the night, I was working up because I was hungry. So I was just, okay, I'm hungry. I'm going to listen to my body and be flexible. If I'm hungry, then I'm going to eat. So throughout the night, I was waking up like that several times and then eating. So everything I had planned before totally switched from what I end up doing. But that was a very good advice that he gave me, and something that I carry with me even now. It's how I approach everything now.
Just with the salt water, many, spending countless hours in the water, does the salt water, all the salt in the ocean, does that speed up the dehydration process in your body? Like, does the salty water sort of suck out moisture within your body quicker than as compared to as if you're in like a pool? Does that would that have any?
That's a good question, and I don't know. I was drinking fluid every 30 minutes, and also I had a wetsuit, and I wasn't rarely hot. There is only a couple of weeks, maybe a week, where it was very hot. I couldn't wear a wetsuit because the Gulf Stream, it was 81 degrees Fahrenheit, so it was very hot. I just had to wear a little rash guard because of the sun and also the jellyfish. And that time I had to drink much more. But most of the time it was not hot, so I didn't feel like I needed to drink and drink and drink. Every 30 minutes I was drinking, maybe a cup of water or liquid, and that was enough.
What about, I read somewhere that you were followed by a shark for a few days or 5 days. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was I think it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Before leaving, of course, the possibility of encountering a shark was there. So I did a lot of research about the type of equipment we could use and what was available, and found out a shark pod. It's a protection or device that was developed by people in South Africa, divers. And it is basically an electrode that creates a magnetic field. So it's a two-part. You have one part that you set on your fin and the other on your tank. Of course, for me, I couldn't do that because I couldn't wear it on me. So the device was attached to a line beside the boat. And the shark, it was early on, within the first 2 weeks of the swim. One evening I got out of the water, and then the captain said, "Hey, look at that, there is a fin of the shark circling." I said, "Whoa, okay." And it was very surprising because also at the time we didn't think we will encounter a shark that early, and we didn't use the device at the time either. So the next day I was getting ready on deck, putting my wetsuit, and the fin was circling the boat. We put the device in the water. As soon as the device was in the water, the fin disappeared. I swim for 8 hours, get out of the water. We turn the device off. Boom, the fin reappears again. And that happened for about 5 days. The 5th day, I start seeing some shadow passing, below me, and say, "Wow, that's kind of strange. Here, I didn't see that before. Or what is that? Maybe big tuna fish around." And then a couple of more times, the very linear form. It was about 8 feet long. And at that time, I decided, well, maybe the shark is getting a little too comfortable. I'm going to go back on the boat. So I swam a shorter day. And that was the last time we saw the shark. The next day, we didn't see the fin anymore. But during those 5 days, it was, of course, in my mind. I was trying to be as close as possible to the boat and to be right on the top of that magnetic field, about 2-3 meters below me. And because that field that is being created, it's not that big. So I know that whenever you had a big wave pushing the boat and it was falling back, it wasn't anymore. So it was in the back of my mind a little bit to try to catch up and stay as close as possible to the boat. But those conditions, they are there. You cannot you can go out of your control because it's going to you are going to work down what you are doing and rely on the equipment, rely on the people there to keep you safe, and that's all you do. And I hope that we'll see sharks because the sharks are very important. Today a lot of sharks have 90% of the big fish have disappeared in the last 100 years. So when you remove one type of big predator in an ecosystem, that is going to trickle down and totally destabilize the ecosystem. So the shark and the shark issue, I know that it can be very scary to be swimming the shark, but I hope that, we'll see more and more sharks in the water because they are being decimated.
Just with the Atlantic swim, after swimming 5,980 kilometres across the ocean, when you made it to France, what were the first words that came out of your mouth?
The first word that shout out like that out loud, and I think it was a reporter who asked me a question. I said, "Never again."
Never again.
Because all your emotions are very raw, and you remember all the pain, the difficult moment, and everything is right there, and you want not to live that anymore. But then after, when you take some distance and remember what you went through, then you realize how much pleasure you get out of it and how much you learn about yourself and how important those type of moments are. So that idea of going for another swim came very soon after that, a couple of months or so after I finished the Atlantic.
Just on pain, throughout that whole ordeal, you would have gone through so many ups and downs. With the pain, do you have any particular techniques or tips that you use to help yourself deal with the pain and endure the pain?
You have to realize that you cannot do something like that without any pain. Pain is part of the daily routine. And the best thing to do, or the best thing that I was able to do, is to dissociate my mind from my body. And then not to think about the risk, difficulties, the pain that I had, because my mind was on an autopilot somewhere else and my body was just on its own. So I use, meditation. I use some techniques like that too, because what I'm doing, it's not difficult per se for the physical part of it. It's swimming. Swimming is not difficult on your body. And I'm not swimming at a fast pace. So my heart rate maybe at 120, 130. So it's easy to sustain hours after hours. But the most difficult part is the mind, and to stay sane and to have control of your mind the whole time. That's the most challenging is just that. Yeah. When you are born to control that, then after everything becomes easier. Of course, you will have pain. You will have, you're isolated. Your family is not there. The same thing over and over. But it's an amazing adventure. It's an amazing feeling to know that you are doing something that people tell you, well, you cannot do. It's impossible, and then you are still progressing and moving forward.
Now, this Atlantic swim was in 1998, about 20 years ago. So you fast forward to today, you've got a new project that you've been working on. Now you're attempting to swim across the Pacific Ocean from Tokyo to San Francisco. guys, Matt here. This podcast is a labour of love, and all episodes are researched, scheduled, edited, created and promoted in my spare time. Typically, after an episode has been recorded, it can take another 3 hours of post-production activities to get the final cut. If I'm providing you with value and you wish to support my vision of sharing these inspirational stories to the world, you can do so at borntokickarse.com and click on the Patreon banner. Your support will help to maintain the monthly podcast running costs and enable me to outsource repetitive tasks so I can bring you even more Kick Arse episodes. Once again, if you want to support me in producing this podcast, head over to borntokickarse.com and click on the Patreon banner. You can't miss it. And now back to the rest of the show. Tell us about that. Tell us about when did you start to entertain the idea of potentially giving this ocean a go? How long ago did you start to entertain that idea? I'm gonna attempt or start some planning towards attempting to swim across the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, it was gradual. Right after the swim in the Atlantic, I said never again. And then after a couple of months later, I was thinking, well, I know I will go back. I know I will do something else. And I thought about, it's like a mountain climber. Once you and then you are looking for the next one. And for me, a few years after, it became more and more apparent that, the next one is the Pacific. And it's like following D'Aboville footstep. He did the Atlantic and then after the Pacific, and people who are crossing one ocean, then after if they cross another, then they go for the Pacific. But one thing that had changed a lot and that I was getting more and more involved with is the fact that I'm swimming in open waters in the ocean. I was able to see the changes that happen. More plastic, even if you don't have to swim, even if you walk on the beach and you have been walking on the beach for the last 20 years, every so often you come back, you will see that there is much more plastic on the beach. And I noticed that through my swimming, through my training, through even though when I'm not training for a swim, I always enjoy swimming. So it's an activity that I do on a regular basis. And when I am doing that, I'm seeing the changes that happen in the ocean. And so now I am a father. I have a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old. And that is a concern to me, that I know that a lot of things that I've seen with my father in the ocean that we discovered together, I hope that I can still do that with my kids, and I am doing it as much as I can. We swim in open waters together, and then sometimes we have dolphins swimming around, and you have amazing moments like that. And I'm thinking, well, will they have the same opportunity to have and to share those experiences with their children, with their grandchildren? And that became very important to me, that I said, well, I'm passionate about the swimming in open waters. I have enjoyed it for many, many years. It's almost my backyard for me. So it's only natural that I use that passion to try to get the attention on something that is affecting everybody. It doesn't matter where you live. And to try to alleviate some of we probably don't know and don't see the impact of our bad habits on land. But there is a definite negative impact when you are in the middle of the ocean. You can see the plastic, you can see less fish, and so on. You can see the impact. So I hope that with that, the next project is the swim from Tokyo to San Francisco. But the big mission and the big focus is to get the attention on the environment and to make people understand that it's just by changing some of our bad daily habit that we have that we can make a positive impact. I don't know how it is in Australia as far as if they give you plastic bags to use to pack your purchase. But in the US, you have only few locations and areas where those plastic are banned. But I think it's more important that people realize that they have that choice in there. They say, okay, I'm not going to use the plastic. I'm going to use my own bag. And if more people just do that, it will be already doing a big difference. So that's how I see the swim, to educate people of what we are finding, because we are doing a lot of different collecting a lot of different data about the environment, about the plastic, about radioactivity, and so on. But to educate about what on land is directly affecting the environment, and I hope to change a few minds and open the discussion even more and have more people changes their daily life.
There is what's known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and there's sort of reports in terms of the size of it. Some people say, like, they don't really know exactly how big it is, but some people sort of say it's the size of Texas, or where I'm from, sort of the size of Queensland. It's either way, it's massive. It's a massive area that's basically just floating in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Do you think, are you going to be swimming through that, or is it sort of like above it?
I will be swimming through it. So it's a big area. It's between Hawaii and California, and I will cut the northern part of that gyre. Yep. And there's a myth about the big garbage patch that people think it's big pieces of plastic that it's almost like an island, you can step on it and so on. But it's not. It's microplastic, so plastic that are half a centimeter or even less, and that's why it's very difficult to see and to know the size of it, because when you have small pieces like that, you cannot get any satellite pictures. It's too small. So the only way you know where that garbage patch is that you have to have a boat going on site and trolling a net and counting the plastic and say, okay, that density of plastic is higher than everywhere, so we're still in the garbage patch. It's only by having people going on site doing that. And so what is also very disturbing is that what is on the surface and floating is just a small portion, because the majority is somewhere in the water column or at the bottom or in the belly of the fish or birds, but it's very small quantity that is floating around.
Now, with this swim, you're also doing this in conjunction with a lot of medical and scientific research. There's a lot of scientists and other specialists that are going to be using you, like studying yourself during this 8,851 kilometre swim. Can you tell us about that? I believe you've got some cardiologists that are going to study your heart, and can you maybe give us or share some more about the other medical stuff that's going to be studied on yourself?
Yeah, so basically we have two different sides of the study. One is going to be a marine study, and you have about plastic, radioactivity, plankton, pH, and we have different data that we are going to collect. The other is the medical side, and it's about what it will do to my body to be in water for that long, basically in space almost, because I won't have the gravity and the pull and all that is working on me. So what effect is going to have on my body, bone, and also the eyes and the heart. And the fact that I'm going to be working out and exercising for so long, are going to be the effect on my heart. And one cardiologist and other researcher are interested because they see a good parallel between what I am doing and what an astronaut will experience in a long flight duration. And that's where they are interested in doing that part of the study for the medical side. What we are very interested in, what we are collecting data about, it's all the marine side, because for us, we can always say, oh, it's, there is some problem. There's a lot of trash in the water, a lot of plastic. We are doing all wrong and that. But if we don't have any fact to back it up, if we don't have any expert to talk about the state of the ocean, then we are just another person that is going to bark at the tree. And we don't want to be person as people who just want to say, oh, it's a bad environment, we are doing it all wrong and all that. No. What we want to do is to bring experts that are on land that give us a protocol to follow on how to collect the data, and have them talk about what is the state of the environment, so that after we can open the discussion and show people that some of the habits that we have on land have a very negative impact on the ocean. Yeah. We never want to point our fingers on an industry and saying, oh, that's a bad industry because they do such and such. No, it's not the goal of what we are doing.
You know, you mentioned, when you're swimming for many hours, for months, it sort of simulates being in space or, very low gravity.
Right.
What sort of effects have you sort of noticed? Any effects of like the low gravity on your organs yourself, like in terms of like maybe your kidneys, or because I know with like long distance running, particularly if you're dehydrated, your kidneys can fail. Is that sort of similar with long distance swimming as well? Is there a possibility of renal failure or other impacts on your organs?
I think there is also a possibility of some expert on land and how to follow certain protocol and certain rule to make sure that I get the right nutrition and right hydration throughout the swim. But as far as me now being able to experience what an astronaut will experience, not during my training, I don't think, because I run, I spend most of the time feeling the gravity. I swim. When I swim, I don't swim as much because I want to do more cross training and keep that feeling that I have, the pleasure of swimming. I want to keep it intact. I don't want to swim too much right now. When I will be spending all those hours in the water doing the crossing, that's something that they are interested in finding for bone density. Will I lose some bone density, or the fact that I am doing so much exercise, will it counteract some the bone density loss that might have happened? That they don't know. Also, there is something about the pressure in the eyes when you are in low gravity that influence your vision, and they want to find out exactly how it will happen with me. The fact that I'm facing down all the time, I won't have a pressure on my eyes. Will it counteract that? But they are the mainly and that with the heart also. But the heart is a combination of exercise and also low gravity.
I just want to touch on injuries. What injuries will you face and experience during, swimming 8 hours a day for up to 6 months? Is there, sort of the day-to-day niggles? Do you get like extreme chafing sort of underneath the armpits, or do you get shoulder injuries? What sort of injuries do you face through swimming many hours every day?
Yeah, so you try to minimize the risk, of course, and then after you hope for the best. But if you are well prepared, you have very minimum risk of having injury, such as chafing and a problem with the shoulders, tendonitis, and so on. the injuries might be being slammed against the boat, for example, if you have a wave or falling down on the boat or something like that. In the water, I know exactly the equipment that I use. I, put a rash guard under the wetsuit, and sometimes I put different type of wetsuit so that if there is a seam, it's not going to be at the same position, and it's going to prevent from chafing. And if that happen, then you can feel it from the beginning. It's something that through training, I know exactly where it happened, and then I can put more layers under to avoid that. As far as tendonitis, it's true that swimmers have a big problem. If there is a problem, it would be mainly the shoulders, the arm. Yeah. For me, it's a little bit different because I am using fin. So most of the power is coming from my legs, and the rotation of my shoulders, it's not too much to propel myself. It's much more like for balance. So I don't put a lot of stress on my shoulders, and I rely more on the propulsion of my legs. So the shoulders, the only time I had somewhat of an injury in the Atlantic is when it was very, very cold and I was trying to use gloves. And the problem with the gloves, what will happen is that first you are going to increase the surface that you have to push with your hand against the water. Then the glove is going to be full of water, so it's heavier. So when you recover, you have a heavier hand to rotate. And then after when you have a glove, you don't have the feel of the water on your hand, and your strokes start to be sloppy. And so that's what happened when I was wearing gloves for one day. My right shoulder, I started to feel a little tendonitis, so I stopped. I never used glove after that anymore. I never had any problem again with a shoulder problem.
Just with your swimming technique, I noticed on your website there's some photos. You have a snorkel that comes up sort of up through sort of the front of your head.
Yeah.
When you're swimming, do you sort of alternate between doing sort of normal freestyle or the crawl technique? And do you also ever incorporate just having both hands out in front and using sort of like a dolphin type motion where you're not using your arms, but you're sort of more using your whole body in conjunction with your fin? Do you sort of alternate different swimming techniques?
No, most of the time, 99.99% of the time, it will be a freestyle. Yeah. And if I, for example, stretch my two hands in front and start to do the dolphin kick, it's just to stretch a little bit my shoulders, but it's not a technique that will use to just swim. It's just to stretch the shoulders.
What about hypothermia? How much of a factor is that? Does it ever get? Are there areas of the Pacific or that are warmer than other areas, or how much of a risk is that, hypothermia?
Yeah, that's always a risk, because so in the Pacific, the highest temperature we will have, it's probably in the low 70s, and the coldest, depending on the time that we get to San Francisco, it might be, in the mid 50s, high 50s, maybe low 50s if we get later in the year. As you get closer to the U.S. coast, you have a current that comes from Alaska, a strong current that goes south, and that brings the water temperature very, very low. And that's what I would be facing. So most of the time, I just add layers of bodysuit on me, just on the trunk, because if you add layers on your arm and your legs, then after you are too buoyant. It's difficult to kick your legs downward, and it's also much more difficult to pull your hand under the water. Also, you have much more resistance, of course. So it's just on the trunk. but you get cold. Yeah.
With the extra layering, how thick is the like on your trunk? How thick would the wetsuit be, or the multiple wetsuits?
Yeah, it can be, a centimeter and a half. When I swam in the Atlantic, so at one few days, I had about 4 layers of bodysuit on my trunk alone. So that's about, yeah.
Does that also increase your core body temperature? And is that something that you'd need to monitor in terms of your fluid intake?
Yeah, I never had overheating. It's always I'm getting cold, getting very cold when I get out of the water. My hands are almost clenched. My fingers, I cannot unzip my wetsuit because my finger is very tight and yeah, I get very cold in the hands. That's that's the first area where I would feel the cold, because it's an extremity, so it's much more difficult to warm. And I don't wear any protection, so that would be the hand.
What about sunburn? Is that a factor as well? And how
no, never. Because yeah, I if I don't have a wetsuit, then I wear a rash guard, and it just happened maybe a few days in the Atlantic when the water was too hot to wear a wetsuit, and so I had that rash guard. But I don't anticipate that I will be wearing no wetsuit during the Pacific.
I know, and I've experienced this through extreme fatigue with running. Have you ever experienced do you ever hallucinate through extreme fatigue?
Yes, I have. I don't remember that happening during the swim in the Atlantic, but I remember that when I was doing those 24-hour swim nonstop. Yeah, I was seeing like some crazy thing, like monkey in a cage below me. I don't know why. And also big spiders floating and crawling at the surface of the water. And I had to push them with my hand in order for me to progress. So, yeah.
Jeez, that would have been scary.
Yeah, the mind plays some tricks on you like that. Yeah, that's true. What type of hallucination you had?
I remember it would have been about, like, I'd been running for 18 hours or something, and it would have been maybe 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was running through the bush, and I remember seeing, this was sort of like a real rainforest, a real thick sort of bush area, and I remember seeing what I thought was a chicken just sort of perched on the side of the trail. And I thought, geez, that's weird, like seeing a chicken in the middle of the bush just sort of perched on the side of this trail. And I was wearing a headlamp, and the headlamp was shining right at the chicken. And I focused right at it, and I could see, the body of it and its face and its wing. And then as I sort of got closer, I noticed that it was actually just a branch and some leaves. Like as I'd sort of come around it just became apparent that it wasn't a chicken. It was just like a branch with leaves, and then it clicked that I thought, geez, that's a hallucination, and I knew that I was, really struggling with nutrition and through fatigue. Yeah. But it is.
Yes, and unfortunately, I haven't had those hallucinations of mermaid, for example. It's always like odd things.
Do you ever take caffeine at all to keep yourself mentally alert?
No, that's one of the things. When I'm on land, I like to have a cup of coffee to wake up and to get going. And I noticed that's one of the things that I couldn't take when I was on the boat because of the motion and all that. It was too hard on my stomach, I think, and I had to stop drinking coffee. And so right now, in preparation for the swim, it's what I'm doing. I don't drink coffee anymore. Yep. To get used to it.
What about at the end of the day? Like, you've swum for 8 hours a day or swum for a good portion of the daylight hours. When you come back onto the boat, how hard is it are you still thinking about swimming, as you're sort of lying down on your bed trying to get to sleep or trying to recover somewhat? How hard is it to switch off from the day, the day's effort of swimming? Is your mind still constantly thinking, left arm, right arm, left arm? Do you sort of find it hard to switch off at all?
Not at all, because I don't think that's one of the things that I don't do when I swim. It's thinking about swimming. I do everything but thinking about swimming. I do everything but thinking about the next day and how many more miles. Right? I just use my mind to go somewhere else. So when I am finished swimming, I'm very tired. So the first thing that we do is try to grab some food, and then after I go and boom, sleep for a couple of hours. Yep. And I don't have any problem just boom switching to fall asleep.
Yep. When you come back onto the boat for that night, like you're done for the day, what particular food do you try and have your crew prepare for you in terms of providing maximum calories to get back into your body?
Yes, so that would be a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of fat and protein. It could be pasta with a lot of pate and some bread. Unfortunately, we are not going to have any fresh food. So it's going to be, it won't be boring because I'm so hungry that I can eat anything as it's not sugar. But it's for the crew, it's going to be pretty boring.
What about with the animals? What animals can you expect to encounter? Will there be many jellyfish that you can, blue bottles, Portuguese man of war? Sharks? Yeah. Do you sort of expect to see all that?
Yeah, I think so, because it's what I had in the Atlantic. So the sharks, the dolphins, turtle. Also a couple of times I saw sea turtles, jellyfish, Portuguese man of war. We saw a couple of them. These are okay because you see them floating on the surface of the water, so you can avoid them. But for one full day, I had to swim through a school of jellyfish. They weren't too big, maybe 3-4 centimeters, and the tentacles were not that long, but they were so packed together so that I couldn't avoid them. They were about 10 centimeters apart and up from the surface down to the water column, and I couldn't avoid them. So I had to swim through them and got stung in the face, and that was the most difficult day I ever swam. That's when I had to swim through those jellyfish, stung in the face and hands. But I think that's the thing that I would see in the Pacific as well.
So how bad was the pain with getting stung by all those jellyfish? Is it excruciating pain?
It wasn't. I mean, it was painful, super painful. I'm not going to lie, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, they take me out of the water, I cannot take it. No, it was like a big burn, and then it went away after a few seconds. It's slowed down. It wasn't and some are stronger than others. Then those were not as strong, but still pretty painful.
Yep. On a clear day, how far down can you see? When you're wearing goggles and it's fairly clear and calm, I guess. Can you see far down into the ocean, down?
Yes, you can. Maybe, 20 meters, maybe. Yes.
All right.
And sometimes you have a lot of particles in the water, a lot of little organism in the water that will reflect the sun beams, so it's almost sparkling below you. And some have their own fluorescence also, so they have a little green light that you see. And so it's almost as if you were laying down at night, looking at the sky and seeing all those stars. But here you are just facing down in the water, and then looking below you, you have all those little organisms lights up, and quite a scene.
Have you ever seen anything that, like, you're swimming along and you're looking down, and did you ever see like a fish or a shape or some sort of shadow that you honestly didn't know what it was?
No, the only time that happened, it's when I had the shark around. So I found out that it was the shark, but otherwise, no. Unfortunately, when you are in the middle, there is not much life there. So it's very rare that you see anything.
And will you be swimming only during the day, or will you be swimming at night at all?
No, absolutely. Yeah, during the day, I try to avoid early in the morning and late when the sun sets and sunrise. That's the feeding frenzy happens, so you don't want to be in those during those time in the water.
I just want to touch on with your mindset. You are going to go through highs and lows. How do you deal with the low points? Those real tough days where you're physically and mentally exhausted. Do you have how do you deal with those low points to not act on quitting, but just sort of hanging in there? Do you have any special sort of techniques that you use yourself to, be able to deal with those low points?
Yeah, first, when I have a low point, I try to find out what is the source of the low point. Right? Is it because I'm in pain, or is it because I haven't slept enough? Is it because I'm sluggish? Is it because to find exactly the reason for it? Because there is always a reason, or something happened in the boat with the crew members, and then I don't feel, or I haven't progressed as much as I would like to. So once you find the reason for the feeling down, then it's easier to find us before finding, and you have to, if it's something that you have control of it, and then to make the proper changes. If it's something that you don't have control over, then you just put it in the big bucket that I have of things that I cannot control, I don't have control over, that I shouldn't be thinking about, like the weather. That's a big one, I try to be very logical and have a system, and not get put down because I'm feeling down.
Just on the weather, can you expect to encounter, is it like many big storms at all through the swim? And is like maybe lightning a factor? Is massive waves a factor as well? Are they things that you expect to encounter?
Yeah, I think you cannot be in the middle of the ocean for 5-6 months and having a nice flat weather and the sun. We are going to have bad storm, that's for sure. During the Atlantic swim, so we had 10 or 11 big depression passing by. There is a good thing and a bad thing about the depression, is that, of course, it's going to be very difficult in the boat and also in the water. It's going to be very tumultuous, big waves and so on, more risk. But at the same time, it creates some conditions that will make you swim faster, or that will help you. Because if you are the right position of the depression, it's going to create a surface wind that is going to help you, push you, and create those waves, those following waves that are going to come, and you are going to do some amazing body surfing that you could never do without any of those conditions. So, it's a give and take, yeah. And that's why also, it took 73 days for the Atlantic, because of the condition that we had. We were able to take on those depression and ride them as much as possible, plus the push that we had with the current. Having a person on land that tells you exactly the location of the current and where to be, it's very important. So at least you know that you have that few knots of current that is going to carry you when you swim. And then after you add that to those waves and all that, it makes a big difference. Sometimes more distance is being covered by the condition than by me swimming.
How many people are going to be in your crew?
6 to 8.
And is it like a mixture of, people with physiotherapy skills and...
Yeah, it's going to be a mixture, but a lot of the support that we'll have, scientific support, will be on land. So everything will be remotely done. Of course, skipper and crew members, some of them have done training and medical training and first aid and so on. But a lot of it will happen like a telemedicine. That's what we will have to do. We have a medical team on land that we can contact at any moment of the day. And the same with whatever data we are going to collect. The medical team and the science team is on land, so we'll relate to them.
Do you think any of the guys will put on a wetsuit as well and swim alongside you for a couple hours here and there?
Absolutely. That's one of my requirements. Yep. I want everybody at one point or another to come and to be in the water with me so that they understand how it is to be in the water beside the boat and also experience that. So that you feel you are so small in the middle of the ocean and you feel so so small and so humble.
Yep. Oh yeah, I reckon that'd be good fun doing that. Well, not swimming across the ocean, but spending a couple hours every now and then swimming alongside you. That'd be pretty good.
Sure.
Just with goal setting, how important is goal setting? I guess in general, from what you've learnt with your swimming. And planning and all the logistics and stuff like that. How important is goal setting to just normal life?
I read a book not too long ago. I think it's called Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you have read it. It's from Viktor Frankl.
Yep.
Right. And that is right on to what I feel about the swim and what it brings to me. It's all about meanings. It's all about, being interviewed or being, I don't know what it can be, but it's all about the meaning that this project brings to me. And that's my goal, because that's how I identify myself. And I wouldn't think of it any other way.
So what has swimming in general, like throughout your life, all the swims that you've done, all the countless hours that you've spent swimming, what has that taught you about yourself? Is there any sort of main lesson that you've learnt that, that swimming's taught you about yourself and about life?
Yeah, I think something some good thing and some bad thing, I guess. Because if I look at it, I enjoy that. I enjoy being by myself. So it tells me that, I'm not really a social person, or at least I like to have my peace and quiet for a while, for many hours. I enjoy that. But what it taught me a lot is the limitation that you put on yourself. It's preconceived, and you can always challenge them, and you don't know what you are made of until you start challenging those limits that are not real anyway. It's just set in your mind, either set because of the environment you are living in, or because of the way you grew up, or because of other people, what tells you. But they are always not real. It's always up to you to challenge those limits. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I learned, is that none of the limits that we think are there are real. It's up to us to find out if they are real or not.
Just on advice, if you could pick up a phone right now and make a phone call to the 20-year-old Ben Lecomte and give him some advice, what would you tell him?
Wow, that's a great question. That's a great question. I think, that question, I'm going to give you an answer, but also that question is one of the questions I put in my bank of topic to think about when I'm swimming. And I'm going to think more about it when I swim.
Yeah.
But what I will say to that 20-year-old, I would say, go for what makes you happy. Don't go for something that is plastic, something that is fictitious, something that is that will take you outside your track because you think that it's the money that is more important here, or the people that you know. No, just stay true to what your goal is and what makes you happy in life.
Whereabouts can people find you online? Your website and follow your, the expedition across the Pacific Ocean, which kicks off in April next year, April 2017. Whereabouts can people sort of follow your training and, the charity and all the, the medical research and stuff like that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So we have a website that is thelongestswim.com. And then from there, you can go to different social media that we have also. That's everything. It's under The Longest Swim. And on our site right now, it's a lot of information about what the swim. It's going to be the research that we are going to do, data we are going to collect, and so on. And as we start the swim, it's going to be much more interactive with a map of our progression, with videos, with a logbook, and so on. So right now, it's just a presentation site that is going to change.
Yeah, well, it's been fascinating speaking with you, and good luck with the swim. I'll definitely be following you, and I'll put all those links in the show notes. And
well, thank you very much for your interest.
You're a fascinating guy, an incredible person. Even wanting to attempt this blows my mind. I just good luck with it all.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for, like I said, your interest and giving me the opportunity to talk about it, and plenty of time to go into the details on what is important for not only for me, but all the people that are there, that are part of the expedition, that are on the boat. They are very dedicated to the mission.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks again, Ben, and good luck with The Longest Swim.
All right. Thank you, Matthew.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
You've just been listening to the Born to Kick Arse podcast at borntoKickArse.com. If you liked what you heard and want more, please subscribe on iTunes. Give a 5-star rating and a Kick Arse review. This really helps to boost our presence and continues to allow us to introduce you to the most fascinating people on the planet. Welcome aboard, and catch you next time.